Hi, Philip. Are you my room moderator?
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Not bad.
Cool. So I need to make you. Are you already a co-host?
Yeah, I think so. I already have like the security permissions.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else I need to know? I know there was like a lot of instructions on the guide. Turn on live transcripting, right?
Yeah, it looks like wow, let's take a look.
Um,
Oh, there it goes.
cool. And then let me see what else we need to do. Is there anything else? Live transcripting, and then other accessibility things. No, you're the co-host, so you'll handle that stuff. Um, do you know if there's gonna be interpreters in this room?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right. Cool. I think we got everything. So I'll just share my slides. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Hi.
Awesome. So we don't start until 11:15, so feel free to turn up your
Okay, I'm
camera.
gonna go finish
Take,
eating.
yeah, do whatever you need to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
See you in a bit. Hi, folks. Welcome. Hi, Dale. Hi, Dennis. We don't start for another 13 minutes or so, so feel free to take care of yourself. Go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, get a snack, whatever you need. And we will start promptly at 11:15. Thanks for being here so early. Love that you're outside, Dale. It is 11:15 and I want to honor everybody's time. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully you've had a really awesome digital learning day today. I know this is the second session and it's right before lunch, so hopefully y'all will stick with me before you get a little bit of a break from looking at a screen. I know, we were on Zoom for such a long time and then went back to in person. And so having a full day of Zoom can be a lot. So I appreciate everyone for being here. If you haven't yet, and I think that you just need to sign in once for the day, like it says here, but in case you haven't yet, please scan this QR code or access this bit.ly to sign in for the PD day. Hopefully you are all at the right place. This session is titled Using Empathy to Guide Human-Centered Engineering Design. And then my colleague, Rachel Roberson, in the chat put the slides in there, so feel free to follow along if you would like. And then there are also a ton of resources and links to look through during the presentation or even after, if you decide that human-centered engineering design is something that you would like to do with your students this year. So before we begin, just want to give an introduction. So my name is Angel Valerio. I'm the STEM Education Program Manager here at KQED. I'm also joined by my colleague, Rachel, who will introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I am Angel's humanities counterpart, and I love coming to these sessions where I learn so much about STEM education and all the connections we all have to each other's content areas. So glad to be here and break down those silos.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and so obviously this is a presentation specifically for STEM teachers, but engineering is such an interdisciplinary action. And so we'll do some introductions in a bit to see who's in the room. But if there are some non-STEM teachers here, kudos to you. Really happy that you're here. Because all of y'all are SFUSD teachers, obviously you should know that KQED is your local NPR PBS public media station. We have our radio station as well as our TV station, but we also have an amazing education department that is dedicated to providing media literacy resources for you all. And if you have the slides open, these are all live links to some of the resources that we have. KQED Teach is our platform for teachers to get more professional learning. We have some free self-paced online courses that you can take. Also, you have access to all our free live online workshops that we host periodically throughout the year. KQED Learn is our platform for youth to be able to discuss and have discourse with other youth all along the country in a safe space, as well as a place for them to publish any media that they create related to our youth media challenges, which we'll talk about today. And then, like I said, we're a PBS affiliate station. And so we support PBS Learning Media, which is a great database with tons of lesson plans, K-12, all subject areas, related to some PBS media, but also a bunch of other PBS stations also support and help bring curriculum there too. And then finally, we with PBS, we co-facilitate this media literacy educator certification. And so if you feel like you are able to demonstrate certain competencies in media literacy, you can get certified for it to show off that you are a media literacy expert. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to click on these links. But for now, after I've introduced myself and KQED, I would love to know who is in the room. So if you can please introduce yourself, either in the chat or if you feel free and you want to unmute yourself, totally say where you teach or where you work, and then what subject or grade level do you teach? Oh, it says here, you can only direct message me. Oh, chat is restricted. So I'm just going to call out. That's so funny. Thanks for letting me know. So I'm just going to read out what some folks are saying. Angel Rafael or Ralph is a librarian who wants to inspire design with research. Geraldine says, you can only direct message you. Thanks for letting me know. Robert, I'm a math teacher at Lowell High School. I teach algebra and pre-calculus. Philip, thanks, Philip. Oh, now it's all cool. People can freely chat. Great. So I see some second grade teachers here, middle school. Another teacher from Lowell teaching math. Awesome. 5th grade, 6th grade. bio at Lincoln High School. Awesome. So we have some elementary folks. We have middle school, high school represented, librarians, para educators. Thank you all for coming here and learning a little bit more about engineering design. So here are the goals for our session. The first is to understand what human-centered engineering design is. The second is you'll learn about KQED's Engineering for Good Youth Media Challenge. Excuse me. And then finally, you'll have the opportunity to brainstorm some project ideas for your classes, or if you're not a classroom teacher, some project ideas that you can use to support the teachers that you work with. And I would also love to know, why did you decide to choose this session, and what do you hope to take away? So looking at our goals, does this fit your needs, or were you hoping to take away something else? I would love to know that, just so I can make sure that I hit your goals and you find this session fruitful. Thanks, Jonathan, for kicking us off. So you have a monthly engineering Lego challenge with students, and you want to deepen those challenges to address real world everyday issues that are applicable to them. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Ralph says, I want to open a library for addressing human-centered part of the goal. Great. Marianne says, interested in learning what human-centered engineering is. Great. Thanks so much for sharing. And yeah, I think that human-centered engineering is a relatively new term, but based on the keynote for today and all the work that SFUSD educators are doing around social justice and equity, a lot of the things that you are doing, if you center your curriculum around that, is already students or human-centered. So awesome. Thanks for sharing. So real quick, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the standards. And so NGSS, as many of you know who are science teachers, it's a lot. And the 3D model of NGSS focuses on the core ideas, right? So those are your standards, your cross-cutting concepts. So those are the patterns and the trends that you see along the spectrum of subjects and topics. And then we have our science and engineering practices that hopefully folks are doing in their classroom because you're having hands-on activities, inquiry-based activities, but a lot of times teachers feel overwhelmed trying to add all of these things together. And we hope that by doing this project, you are able to see the science and engineering practices manifest in your class. If you have these slides open, this is a really helpful infographic that the Smithsonian created that goes through what the science and engineering practices are and gives you some examples of that. So it's helpful for you to kind of understand more about what the practices are, and then also seeing the differences between what scientists do and what engineers do. So scientists really help explain phenomena, whereas engineers help solve problems and design solutions to problems that they see in the world. A lot of the practices are very similar, right? You'll use and develop models, you'll carry out investigations to better understand things. Once you carry out those investigations, you'll analyze and interpret data. But really, at the core of it, scientists are explaining the explanations, but then the engineers are designing the solutions. So, but nonetheless, engineering can happen in any subject matter. So going back to this. So these here are the engineering design standards. So if you were teaching an engineering class, these are the standards that you would need to try to hit. I just wanted to bring this up here because I believe that these engineering design standards can fit into any subject matter and any topic. And I also wanted to uplift that these engineering design standards actually are more human focused or human centered, because you're thinking about societal needs and wants, you're thinking about real world problems, you're also thinking about what social, cultural, and environmental impacts happen in the world when you are trying to solve these problems. So I just wanted to uplift that. But for folks who want to better understand what human-centered engineering design is, really at its core is it's putting people first, and it's solving problems with the end user and the end community in mind. So when you're thinking about solving particular problems that are happening locally or globally, you think about who are the people who are impacted by that, and how can I serve those people in order for them to have a better life for themselves. And so human-centered engineering design is centered around empathy and equity, because in order to be human-centered, you need to be able to see the world through the eyes of the folks that you are trying to help solve these issues for. So human-centered engineering design allows us to see the world through other people's eyes and also gain an understanding of their experiences and also the environments that they live in. And then for me, and I know for a lot of folks here, it focuses around equity and also identifying problems that disproportionately impact marginalized communities and using engineering in order to solve the problems within those communities in order to disrupt patterns of injustice and inequity that happen there. And then finally, it's all rooted in the possibility that we can reimagine our world. We can reimagine the communities that might not have been served or might have been oppressed in the past or even currently, but we can reimagine that there can be a better world for them and that everybody deserves joy and accessibility and sustainability. So ultimately, human-centered engineering design is engineering that is designed for the good of people who live on this earth. Are there any questions about that? We'll go into some examples, but hopefully that kind of clears up what we mean by human-centered engineering design. All right. And so this is the typical engineering design process. So in engineering design, you obviously think of a problem first that is happening in your community, nationally, globally, and then understand that problem, and then eventually identify and brainstorm ways to come up with some solutions, prototype that solution, iterate so you improve that solution, and then ultimately you communicate that out. Because I have such a short time with you all, we're not going to focus on the whole engineering design process. We're really going to focus on this first part, which is understanding and defining a problem and examining the impact, because that's really the way that you are prioritizing empathy in engineering, right? So when you are introducing the context to a problem, you are asking these questions. Who is impacted by this problem? How are they impacted? What causes this problem to occur in the first place? How do the communities impacted by this problem feel about the issue? And then why should you care about this issue and these communities? Right, so all of these questions dig into teaching students how to be more empathetic, to think outside of themselves, and to think about just collective prosperity, right? Collective accessibility, sustainability. So at KQED, we do have this youth media challenge. I know that there are some elementary teachers here on the call, but this youth media challenge is specifically for middle and high school students, because at the end of the challenge, we ask them to create media that then they post on our youth media showcase. But essentially what your students would do is go through the engineering design process with your guidance, choosing a problem that they can create a solution to. And then as they create their solution, they create their prototype, they create media to be able to communicate that solution. Because one of the science and engineering practices is to be able to communicate the science, your understanding. And so that media making part is really important to us because that is what demonstrates that students understand what they've created and what solutions they have. And so if you are an elementary school teacher, you can totally have your students do human-centered design and engineer solutions to a particular problem that you are exploring. They can even make media, but unfortunately, because of student privacy at KQED, we only are allowed to have middle and high school students submit to our showcase. And just checking the chat real quick. Yeah, Rachel put information about the challenge in the chat, so you can check out that. And then this is also a button here. We have a ton of curriculum resources. We have a digital student notebook. And then if you click on the showcase here, you'll see some examples of a ton of different engineering solutions that students have come up with. But for right now, I'm going to show you this video so you can have a better idea about how this group of youth from Santa Clara engineered a solution to a problem that impacts a particular population.
There are currently 450,000 children and teens in the United States foster care system. This is a system for children who are in dangerous family situations, and they go and live with temporary foster homes while their parents are recovering. However, while these kids are in the system, on average, they move through 7 foster homes. When these kids move, everything for them changes, from their workspace to their homes. We wanted to make something more consistent for them. Here's our solution.
Introducing Adiona, a work area that fits into a suitcase. Our solution allows foster kids to have their own personal portable workspace that they can take with them wherever they happen to go.
Our product is designed for space and setup time efficiency. Inside is a desk that unfolds and can be set up for work atop your suitcase, a storage area so you can carry around your texts and notebooks, and section containers so you can organize your learning materials such as colored pencils and rulers.
There are a few different ways to use Adiona, including setting it up on the floor near an outlet so you can charge a Chromebook while using it for online school, working while traveling with a desk over your lap, or sitting at a desk with a device beside you so that everything you need is right there. We hope that in the future, our invention can help foster kids get an equal opportunity to work on assignments and engage in their hobbies without having to worry about moving to new homes unprepared. No matter who they are or where they come from, our team believes that all children deserve a well-rounded supplemental education. And with our device, we pledge to do our part to make that happen.
Thank you for watching.
All right, oops. Let me exit out of that. Cool. So some things to think about when watching this video to relate it to human-centered design. Who is impacted by this problem? So this group of students recognized that this was a problem that was happening with foster youth. How were the foster youth impacted? They were being moved around to different foster homes and maybe didn't have a consistent workspace. And so what causes this problem to occur in the first place, right? The fact that these students are in the foster system and might not consistently be in the same homes or with the same families for a longer period of time. And then oftentimes, how do communities impacted by this problem feel? They might feel stressed. They might feel like they're behind on their schoolwork because they're moving around a lot. They might feel like they are inadequate because they don't have their materials that they need. And then why should we care about this issue or these communities? I know that one of these students actually, she mentioned in her artist statement that her family is a foster family. And so they take in foster students or foster youth. And so for her, it was a personal issue, but also, you know, foster kids are at our schools. They might be your classmates, they might be your students. And so it's something that we should care about, because we should try as best as we can to create consistency for these youth. So this is just an example of human-centered engineering design that youth have come up with. So far, after looking at this example, are there any questions that folks have about engineering for good or human-centered engineering design? I would love to make room right now to answer them before we move on. Or if you have any reactions or thoughts about the video you saw, feel free to put them in the chat too. I would love to hear what folks think about that as well. Was that integrated into a classroom lesson? Yes. So because it was a middle school class, this teacher had the opportunity to make essentially an engineering unit happen in her class, where all the students chose different problems to explore and to create prototypes or solutions to. So this particular example was human-centered, but it ran the whole gamut of different problems. And so I know that there was, what was the subject area? So I think that this was a 7th grade integrated science class. Yeah. No problem. Thanks for asking. Any other questions or comments, thoughts, feelings? Is this something that you think that you can do in your class?
Yes, one of the things that I like to work with engineering students is their ability to be able to explain and showcase their ideas, because so much of winning an engineering contract is showmanship. So I like to add my own PR advertising experience and interests, so they could jazz up their presentations and enthuse their publics with their hard work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ralph, for sharing that. I totally agree. And honestly, that's where kind of KQED comes in, and why we have our youth media showcase. We think that the communication part is so important for students to demonstrate their understanding about any topic, but science in particular. And so being able to jazz up their presentations, to create a video with graphics and visuals is something that we definitely promote. And then also, if maybe publishing on a showcase isn't something that your students want to do, you as a classroom teacher or as a librarian can think about other ways to showcase students' work. I think that the only audience shouldn't be just the teacher, right? If you're going to do something, hopefully you can do a showcase within your classroom, or if you have the ability to do a showcase in your school community, just finding different ways to share out the learning, I think, is super important and empowers our students, especially if they're creating solutions that they're passionate about and that they care about, to hear that feedback from others about their work. So thanks for sharing that. Cool. So like I said, we don't have that much time to go through all of the steps of the engineering design process. And I really want to give folks opportunities to kind of brainstorm how you can see this live in your classroom. But I have 2 more examples that I would like to share with y'all. The first, if you go through KQED's curriculum, we have an example prompt that is related to the plastic problem that is happening globally. And so that is a pretty big prompt, but what I am hopefully going to share with y'all is how to change these big problems and or how to visualize these big problems and come up with prompts where students are thinking about the humans and the populations that are impacted by them. So you're encouraging that empathy. So this is a prompt that is more human-centered related to the plastic problem. So as most of you, or maybe all of you know, right, plastic is a huge issue globally. Plastic increases greenhouse gases and climate change, and is not something that can be transformed or biodegradable, right? And so plastic then is found in our waterways and found essentially everywhere really on the earth. And so this plastic problem really focuses on the human populations that are impacted by the plastic litter that is occurring in their countries. So I'm just going to read this out loud. So out of sight, out of mind. Most of the plastic that we recycle in the US is shipped out to other countries to deal with. These countries are often poorer countries with communities that don't have proper infrastructure or waste management to handle all the plastic that is imported. As a result, there has been a significant decrease in human health in these poorer countries that cannot keep up with the demand to get rid of all the plastic. So that's the context for the prompt. And then what your students would be doing is creating a solution that protects the health of the communities that receive plastic recycling from richer countries like the US and the UK. So this is an example of that prompt, and how in the classroom you would encourage empathy is, like I said, in setting the context for the problems. And so in trying to understand the problems here, these are all different links to different articles that share statistics and stories about people all around the world, marginalized, poor communities that are impacted by plastic. So this article here shares about a village in Indonesia that's being buried by plastic because there's so much plastic import that they have no space for it. So literally this village is under a plastic sea, essentially. The second example is about how pungent smells and respiratory illnesses from recycling plants are basically pervasive in the city in the Philippines that folks have nicknamed Plastic City. This article here explains how in Kenya, mosquitoes are now breeding on plastic litter. And because they're breeding so much, it's spreading dengue fever and other mosquito-borne illnesses because they're using these now as environments to breed. And then finally, this example shares how because there's so much plastic in this city in Malaysia, folks are illegally burning the plastic, and that's causing breathing issues in order to get rid of it. And so when you are having your students understand the problem, it's important for them to gain the context. So any videos or articles that you can share with them so they can better understand what is happening to the people living in these communities will help them better create an empathy for these communities. So thinking about, like I said, these questions: who is impacted, how they're impacted, what caused this problem in the first place. We have a ton of other resources here from KQED and some other reliable sources regarding plastic and recycling that you can take a look at if this is a prompt that speaks to you and maybe speaks to the content that you teach, but essentially you are focusing on the human impact, and that's what's making it human-centered, and then creating a solution for that. So I have a video that I'm not going to show the whole video, but this is an example of a solution that was created in retaliation, I guess, for the plastic pollution problem in Kenya, the UN has this Young Champions of the Earth Engineering Design Challenge, where different communities engineer solutions that essentially decrease plastic or decrease environmental issues that are happening in different populations. So I'll share this.
Let's turn trash into cash. My name is Nzambi Mate. I'm the founder of Jijenge Makers Limited, and we convert plastic waste into building products. Plastic waste is not just a Kenya problem, but it's a worldwide problem. And here in Nairobi, we generate about 500 metric tons of plastic waste every single day, and only a fraction of that is recycled. We decided, what more can we do instead of just sitting in the sidelines and complaining? Essentially, companies have to pay to dispose the waste. So we solve their problem. The waste essentially comes for free. This is the plastic waste we get from factories. With this, we mix with sand, as the plastic is like the binder. We have 3 machines. The extruder does the mixing of plastic waste with sand at very high temperatures, and then the press compresses it. Plastic is fibrous in nature, and so therefore the brick ends up having a stronger compression strength. Does that look like waste to you? It's almost half the weight, so therefore during transportation and installation it's faster in terms of cost implication. We right now have a capacity of producing 1,000 to 1,500 bricks a day. So far we have recycled 20 metric tons, and we are looking to push that value to 50 by the end of next financial year.
All right, so that's just a little bit of this example about how this individual reimagined, right, the plastic waste that was occurring in their community by creating a reusable material. And so I think it's super important for us to share with our students real world examples of human-centered engineering and how the impact of it is really rooted in the possibility that the world can get better, right? And that everyone deserves joyful, accessible, sustainable futures. And so I know a lot of times when students are engineering solutions, they might not think like, oh, my solution is whack, I don't think it's good enough. But, you know, really putting yourself out there and brainstorming and at least thinking through and continuing to prototype and iterate, not only does it breed resiliency, but also it lets, seeing real examples like this lets them know that like their voice and their opinions and their ideas matter, and they could, you know, grow to become something bigger than themselves. So I think it's super important to share examples like this to youth. Obviously, this example was a global example, but you can totally also think about issues that are local to here in the Bay. So this next example, this next example prompt that I have is related to us here in the Bay Area. So I'm going to read it out loud. Over 3 feet of sea level rise are expected by the end of the century if little is done to slow down climate change. In California, the areas along the coast that are projected to experience flooding events by 2100 are home to 145,000 residents, as well as at least 400 hazardous facilities, including power plants, refineries, industrial facilities, and waste sites. Sea level rise poses risk for these facilities to expose nearby residents to hazardous pollutants if flooding occurs. These health risks disproportionately impact most poor communities and communities of color that live in these areas, right? So this prompt is all about sea level rise and how all these toxic waste sites are at our coast. And so if flooding occurs, it could potentially flood and expose the residents to pollutants. So the solution that your students would create would be to stop or to slow down the impact of flooding and hazardous pollution that can have a negative impact on the health of communities living here. Right, so this is a local problem that's happening. And actually KQED has done a ton of work around what is happening specifically in San Francisco. And so these are all live links to different articles that KQED Science has done, but essentially there are a ton of interactive maps that you can see, like if climate change continues to occur at the rate that it does, what is going to happen with sea level rise, and where are the places that would be considered toxic sites, because now these old shipyards or these gas and oil companies that are on their coasts would be underwater and then essentially leach out that pollution into the environment. So this map here is just a screenshot from one of these different interactive maps that UC Berkeley and some other organizations have done, so you can visualize where the places are for which communities would be impacted. And then there has been a lot of work specifically in the Bayview Hunter Point neighborhood in San Francisco regarding the Superfund shipyard site, where previously in World War II, there were a ton of ships in that shipyard that had radioactive and nuclear, did a lot of radioactive and nuclear shipping, right? And so even though the government said that they had cleaned up all of that toxic waste, they still have found it in the soil. And so if sea level rise does occur, then that could potentially impact the residents that live in that neighborhood, right? And we know that Bayview Hunters Point is a neighborhood that is primarily Black. And so you can see here that there actually was a court case, and the jury ruled that the shipyard was a toxic site. And now you can see that the communities impacted are asking for reparations in order to safeguard against the sea level rise. So you can read a little bit more about that. I'm sure folks here are pretty in tune with what's happening in your San Francisco community, so you probably even know more about this than I do. But having your students understand that empathy doesn't just mean like I'm thinking about other communities that are across the world from me, right? You can also think about what's happening in your local community. You can empathize with folks that are here in your city, and maybe some of your students even live in Bayview Hunters Point, and they might not know about these issues, right? So having it a little bit more culturally relevant to them, because this is happening here in the Bay. So here are some more resources if this is a project that speaks to you, that you think you would be interested in exploring more about. And then this is an example of a solution that was created. And so there was also an engineering design challenge that was put forth by an organization called Resilient by Design, where they had a call to action to many different engineers to see how can we combat sea level rise here in the Bay Area. And so I'm not going to show this whole video as well, but this one specifically is about San Francisco and combats what we think might happen in the Bayview.
Emerging into the bay at the southeast shoreline of San Francisco, the East Creek Valley and its surrounding hills are home to a diverse mix of neighborhoods, jobs, industries, and infrastructure that are critical to the functioning of the city.
The area inherited its ad hoc industrial character over decades, but as we come to grips with the changes we'll need to make in order to adapt to rising seas, I hope we can start to think holistically about what's in store and what exactly is possible.
It's kind of a great mix between industrial maker area, community, and also environment.
So I think the opportunity to reconnect people to the water, to have a place that's more human scale and more calm and protected.
I have experienced increased rainfall in storms, and I just see much heavier deluges of rain, I think because of climate change.
Before modern times, Islais Creek was the area's largest freshwater body. As the city grew, it began to exploit these naturally wet flatlands. As industry and deep water port operations grew, paved surfaces and pipes replaced the natural flushing of the watershed. Today, with climate change, these systems and the land they occupy are becoming increasingly strained. As groundwater rises, liquefaction risk during an earthquake will increase. With more intense rainfall, drainage networks will become more and more overwhelmed, compounded by sea level rise and storm surge, leaving the water with nowhere to go. So what can we do? Do we flee or do we fight? How can we find the space for water while allowing space for the growth of the city? By working together, we can find a way to deal with urban and climate stresses in an integrated way. So how can we kickstart this process? Where do we begin? At Pier 90, underutilized lands can be naturalized into soft shoreline to better handle storm flows, creating a new gateway park to Bayview and space for stacked vertical industry and working spaces alongside the iconic grain silos, kicking off a longer-term naturalization of the creek's southern edge. At the Southeast plant, natural treatment systems can be piloted along the creek, using wetlands to process wastewater and tying into a future decking of the plant itself, creating space for much-needed recreation, open space and education opportunities for the neighborhood. Along Cesar Chavez Boulevard, existing vehicle yards can be consolidated and stacked in a future district facility, creating space for a daylit creek along its historic path and opportunities for living by the water along its banks.
All right, so that was an example of what this group of engineers reimagined San Francisco to be in order to combat the sea level rise. And so I just wanted to uplift one more time that human-centered engineering really is rooted in reimagining the possibility that the world can get better, right? And that everyone deserves joyful and accessible, sustainable futures. And having that hope is what is going to get us out of, climate change and all these other environmental injustices. But like I said, showing these examples to youth will help and encourage them, hopefully, to think that their ideas and their solutions do matter and can grow to be something bigger than themselves. I wanted to also uplift that these prototypes, right? They're all drawings, they're all renderings. They didn't necessarily engineer and make a physical thing, right? And so when you think about engineering design in your classroom, depending on your resources, depending on your time, right? Your solutions don't need to be a physical item. You can have youth create a visual model where they make a diagram, or if it's, something related to this, looking at a map of San Francisco, right? Where would you put particular levees or walls or marshland, etc., right? So they can draw, they can make it visual. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that is physical. And I think that's something that a lot of science teachers or just teachers in general worry about, the limitations of engineering, thinking about you need to have all these materials in order to do engineering design in your classroom, but you don't. So we have about 15 minutes left. Now what I want to do is switch gears and really have you all think about how do you fit this type of project into your content. So I gave you a couple of examples global issue, a local issue. You might feel like, wait, this could be something that I can talk about in my class. You might also think, no, like I don't know how this could fit. And so I'm going to give folks the time now to kind of brainstorm how this might work. Here are some just example project prompts related to different subject areas. And I know that there's some elementary folks here and also some math folks. I apologize that I don't have those example prompts for y'all here, but these are just some things that we have that you can think through related to maybe some of the units that you teach in these core science subjects. So in bio, you might think about how can you create a prototype for a prosthetic leg that would help make walking more accessible. And you can think about that in your human body or your skeletal system unit, right? In chemistry, you can think about creating a prototype that removes lead or other chemical toxins from drinking water. So you can do that in your solutions unit. I think that that also goes great with like a chromatography lab where you are separating mixtures. For physics, you can think about how can you create a helmet that can protect your brain in a variety of different scenarios. So this can be in your motion or forces unit, right? So you can think about what would the different prototypes be for a bicycle helmet versus a football helmet, right? And so thinking about that and how you can protect the lives of the folks that would use that. And then environmental science, you can think about how you can create a solution that removes oil that has leaked from pipelines onto native indigenous lands. So that can be as part of a unit on land use or geology or earth science. And so all of these are thinking, like I said, with the humans and the communities in mind that are impacted by these problems, right? So accessibility and disability justice here. You can think about chemical pollution here. You're thinking about the human health of folks here and the lives that might be impacted by brain injury. And then here you're thinking specifically about Native Indigenous folks who are impacted by oil spills. So really thinking about the populations in mind first, and then creating solutions for those folks. So these are just some example prompts. What we're gonna do now is I'm gonna put 5 minutes on the clock for folks to just individually brainstorm any ways that you think that this curriculum can connect to your classroom. So thinking about the content that you teach, the units that you teach, where would this fit in more naturally? Maybe if you already do an engineering unit, so like those Lego challenges, like that somebody had said previously, how can you make that more human-centered? I'm not asking you to remake the wheel, right? I want you to think about what you already teach and how you can just infuse this into what you already do. And so after that 5 minutes, I'm going to ask folks to share what prompts or what ideas you're thinking about onto this Padlet. And then hopefully we'll have a great list of ideas and inspiration that you can maybe see other teachers that teach your same subject matter have that might intrigue you. And then if you still have time, then you can brainstorm, or after brainstorming, you can look at our curriculum. You can see other youth created examples to get more inspiration. Awesome. So I'm gonna put the 5 minutes on the clock, and then feel free to brainstorm on a notebook or open up a Google Doc, however is best for you. All right, we have about 10 seconds left. And so thanks for spending the time to brainstorm ideas for your classroom. If you are willing, definitely add some information or your ideas, your prompts that you're thinking about here on the Padlet. Thanks for those who already started. So I have an example here. How might we reduce waste at lunch? So packaging food waste, etc. And then empathy-centered engineering also requires research. So also thinking about the community research or other types of research that goes into this project. Yeah, I think that that's definitely something to uplift. I think that it's also a great idea to think about these projects interdisciplinarily, right? So maybe having the librarian support with research, but also a humanities teacher or a history teacher helping understand the historical, social, political context that might have led to these particular issues as well would be something that would be super awesome. And then a way for your students to know that learning doesn't happen in silos, right? Your learning happens throughout all of your classes. Great. Another example here, recycling. How can one find out which types of plastics are recyclable? Yeah, definitely. Especially after that example that I had shown where really most of the plastic that we say we recycle isn't recyclable. So how can we figure that out and how can they engineer a solution for that? So thank you for that. Keep these coming. I want to honor everyone's time. We have about 4 minutes left. And so I want to open up the space for any questions that you have regarding human-centered engineering or even coming up with your prompt for your classroom context. Was this something that was easy for you to do, or are you still trying to figure out ways to connect this to your teaching practice? Well, hopefully folks are just still ruminating on it. I know that I threw a lot at you and it's a lot to process, but definitely reach out if you have any questions. I really nerd out on all of this stuff. Project-based curriculum planning is what I love the most. It's my jam. And so if you're thinking about a particular topic, but you're not quite sure how it fits, I'm definitely open to, having a one-on-one with you to be able to plan out something if it's something that you want to do. So here, before we leave in the last 2 minutes, are more resources for the classroom. And so examples of other real life successful human-centered engineering projects. So some videos that your students can watch. If you really want to lean into the SEL part of this project and you want your students to better understand empathy, then here are some resources on that. If you want to lean into really understanding and having your students look at real life data and statistics, here are some helpful tools from the California Office of Health Hazard Assessment, and then also the United Nations has its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and there's a ton of statistics and data around all of those. So some of those goals are like clean water access for all and ending poverty, things like that. And so you can look at these big goals and see how that might fit in with your class. And then finally, more engineering lesson plans or units that you might have some interest in. We have a colleague who created a 3-lesson unit around this Ken Burns documentary about Benjamin Franklin for which he has his chemistry students create graphene, which is a subunit of graphite, and you can use graphene to help create solar panels and different things. And so he has a lesson on here about how you can engineer something for your community with graphene. And then finally, this is an awesome website about teaching engineering and adding engineering to math and science, and honestly, even humanities too. So these are all resources for y'all to take a look at. And then finally, let's stay connected. KQED has a ton of live online free workshops. Here are some that are coming up. Definitely take a look if there's something that interests you. And then finally, please, please, please keep in touch. The offer to be a thought partner isn't an empty one. I love working with teachers one-on-one. I love knowing what you do in your classroom. And if you need somebody to think through planning a project like this, I'm definitely available. So reach out to me via email or Twitter, whichever. Thank you so much for being here. This is the last slide, which is for you to provide feedback. So before you head to lunch, if you can please click on this bit.ly or this QR code to provide feedback about this session. I really take feedback and your thoughts seriously, and hopefully everybody learned something about human-centered engineering design. And have a great lunch. Take care.